大家好，我係 Wildy。雖然本地政治唔講啦，但係外國嘅政治咧，甚至講到火星都會講嘅。咁今次咧係想重製一下咧羅斯威爾事件，因為睇翻之前自己出嘅片咧，好多時候可能都太零碎啊，所以依家係想出一段係專講咧羅斯威爾，同埋我根據嘅資料咧係基於一個前空軍特工 Richard Doty 嘅見證嘅，所以我想以佢嘅見證為本，然後咧就加插自己一啲嘅分析同埋 comments， 所以就會咁關於羅斯威爾嗰個嘅前因後果咧，呢度就唔再去複述啦。咁最主要咧，其中一個就係官方自相矛盾嘅説法，就係喺嗰個7月8號 RAAF 即係羅斯威爾空軍咧就話喺頭條嗰度揾到飛碟，到7月9號咧即刻轉口風。話純粹係一個墮位嘅氣球殘骸。咁呢啲已經太多資料啦，網上，咁我唔想再複述。咁今次咧係想引用翻呢個 Richard Doty 前特工啦，佢嘅爆料嘅。我覺得佢嘅爆料咧係對羅斯威爾事件係一個最整全嘅解讀咯。喺我嘅角度。
I'm Richard Doty. I was assigned as a special agent with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations at Kirtland Air Force Base. I was a counterintelligence officer at the base, and one of my jobs was to conduct counterintelligence operations at the base. And during my time there, my first few months there, I was briefed into a special access program involving the U.S. government's investigation and contacts with extraterrestrial, the visitation of these extraterrestrials to Earth, and the Air Force's involvement with these extraterrestrials. And during this time, I conducted investigations regarding not just the UFO phenomena, but my primary mission, probably 60% of my time was dealt to investigating the UFO sightings and any threats imposed by these extraterrestrials on Air Force or Air Force-related property.
咁呢個半鐘嘅專訪咧，就係急症室嘅醫生啦，Stephen Greer 喺之前有套紀錄片叫《Unacknowledged》不被確認裏邊做主持嘅。咁佢而家同樣係主持。咁如果個急症室嘅醫生即係咁小心搜證，佢都相信呢個前空軍特工嘅見證嘅時候咧，都俾我哋有啲嘅啟示咯。有一次可能路加福音咁樣，啲人話咧係醫生寫嘅，咁醫生嘅搜證咧好小心好仔細，咁一樣我相信Dr. Stephen Greer 咧就專訪呢個 Richard Doty 前特工。咁講真，如果呢個前特工身份存疑嘅時候咧，咁呢個急症室醫生就唔會去專訪佢啦。而其他唔相信 Richard Doty 嘅人咧，都好容易揾到佢個身份係假嘅。咁但係如果對家都冇去對佢個身份存疑嘅時候，或者攻擊佢身份嘅時候，即係話佢前特工嘅身份，呢個退休前特工身份咧係堅嘅。
What year did you first get read into the project?
I was read into the project in the summer of 1979. And the briefing was, it was a special access program. They have a special security clearance to have access to it. And I was briefed into it by an Air Force colonel from Washington who came down and briefed myself and a couple other people into this program.
And do you remember if it had a code name or a project code number?
其他資料補充咧，佢可以講一啲超過50年以上嘅機密資料。換句話說，未夠50年嘅就未必講得。
How do I say this? Because there's still some classifications involved in this, I think. So it was the code name that I was briefed into it was Yankee Black, but that was the program's briefing. It wasn't necessarily the UFO's program. It was just how it was a security code for an access program. Yankee White was access to the White House, and Yankee Black was the access that you would have to get into this program or right into the program.
Right. And what were you told during this briefing, and do you recall the colonel's name?
I'll leave the colonel's name out of it, but the briefing started with the history, U.S.'s involvement with this extraterrestrial, and it started out with a crash at Roswell, but actually, what the crash didn't actually happen at Roswell. Happened closer to Corona, New Mexico, southwest of Corona, New Mexico, and a second crash site that occurred in Magdalena or Horse Mesa, out west of Magdalena, New Mexico, which wasn't located at the same time the Roswell crash was in '47. The crash in Magdalena wasn't located until about '49.
And did they share with you what they found during that investigation and recovery?
They showed us the movie. They actually showed us, I believe, a 16mm movie on the recovery, and the narrator of the movie. It was obviously the movie was classified, highly classified. The narrator in the movie detailed when the crash occurred, approximately when the crash occurred in the latter part of June of 1947. And the recovery, showing military personnel at the recovery site, recovering the bodies at the site, and the craft that was at that site. And one live extraterrestrial was found at the site. And we were told that the extraterrestrial went to Kirtland Air Force Base at that time, and then on to Los Alamos for some time. And it didn't explain fully in the movie exactly what happened to that extraterrestrial, although it did explain that it died in I believe it was 1952. But the bodies of the extraterrestrials that were found at the scene were in a deep freeze, placed in a deep freeze, and sent to Wright Pat Field in Dayton, Ohio.
Did they show the actual footage of the craft and bodies? And
yes.
So what did it look like? What did they look like?
The craft was more or less an oval or egg-shaped craft. It wasn't saucer-shaped. The creatures were about 4 foot. Some of the creatures were mangled, were heavily injured, and their bodies were torn apart. But 2 of the bodies were pretty much intact, and I'm not sure why. If there was an autopsy, they didn't discuss that. But the creatures were approximately 4 foot. They didn't appear to have any ears. They had an indentation for the nose, very, very big eyes. They had a really tight-fitting suit, almost looked like they were nude, but they actually had a very thin but tight-fitting suit on. The fingers had no thumbs, just four fingers, suction devices on their tips of their fingers, and one of them had a head apparatus on it, maybe a helmet or some kind of an earphone or some type of device that they were communicating with the craft or with something else. And they found a number of different objects in the craft that they used, that they experimented with, and found they had a piece of, they thought was plexiglass. It was a rectangular piece of plexiglass that they kept for years before they figured out it was the energy device for the craft. And then they showed us the recovery of the craft in 1949 in Horse Mesa. And that craft, it crashed at the same time the 47 craft crashed. But because of the remoteness of that location, it wasn't detected until a rancher found it on his property in 49. And they did a recovery project on that craft, but the bodies were decayed. And there wasn't much left of the bodies, but the craft was the same type of craft that was found near Corona. It was an oval-shaped craft, but it had damage to it, just like the one at Corona did. And I think the opinion of the scientists were the 2 crafts crashed. for some reason, which was never explained. No, I think nobody has it right. One of the things, one of the things that is quite disgusting, if you for the people who've ever been briefed in this program, is there's not much out there that's factual. The UFO community disinforms themselves. They provide, people go out there and write books, and without any facts, 90% of everybody that writes these books, these authors, had never been in the military, worked for the intelligence community, never had a security clearance, and they're just relying on second, third, and fourth-hand information to write a book, and then basically poison their readers and the rest of the UFO community.
即係之前都有講到啦，班 UFO 群體咧根本係唔信 Richard Doty 嘅，咁最容易攻擊 Richard Doty 就係佢嗰個嘅前軍人身份啦，但係佢哋冇咁攻擊啊嘛，咁即係身份係堅嘅啦。咁你自己選擇啦，究竟你係信 UFO 群體啊，定係信呢個前軍人咧？好嘅，邊個更加有說服力咧？即係邊個即係曾經接觸呢啲機密資料，邊個有一啲嘅 security pass 咧？全部都係 Richard Doty 啊嘛，就唔係好似嗰啲 UFO 群體，佢要靠2、3、4手資料咯。咁當然啦，軍方可唔可以都欺騙軍人咧、欺騙特工咧都可以㗎，有咁嘅可能性。但係點解咧？即係又解唔着喎。咁呢個你自己需要選擇。如果你無限咁樣去推上去，一個呃過一個加呃過，咁永遠係冇結論嘅。同埋即係點解軍方要呃軍人咧？即係解釋唔到咯。所以我相信軍方嗰個嘅簡介會，軍方嘅爆料咧係堅
嘅。And so the July craft actually it crashed in the end of June. The recovery project was into July because it was at the end of June, and people just didn't get it right, and the UFO community didn't get it right. Now there's some people out there that have tried to present the facts, but they've been ridiculed and so their information is not being believed. But just like the Horse Mesa crash in '49, very few people have that factual. They think it was an entirely different craft. The craft was exactly the same as the Corona craft, exactly the same. And the damages that they showed in this movie, they showed sketches of the crafts together at some location, and it appeared, if anybody with a logical mind can see that these crafts crashed together. Why they crashed, I believe the Eben, they called it this particular entity that lived in Eben. He probably explained, but I was never briefed into exactly how he explained that the two crafts crashed. I know it was a lightning storm. It was a storm in that time period when it was crashed. But the two crashes have been separated by some people and then discounted by others within the UFO community. And that's what is so disgusting and troubling within the UFO community. That's why I have nothing to do with them anymore. I've tried. I've went to UFO conventions and tried to explain what the truth is, and nobody wants to hear you because they've written a book that says it happened this way, and they're not going to listen to you, even though they really don't know the truth.
Right. Don't bother me with the facts my mind has made up.
Exactly.
I run into it all the time.
Yeah.
So did the craft, can you describe the actual craft more? Did they show enough of it to get any detail of the size?
It was about 35 foot in diameter across. I mean, 35 by I think 42 or something like that. The interior craft was it didn't have any actual levers or flight control systems that we would identify as a flight control system, or avionics that we would identify as flight avionics. Totally unknown devices in the craft, steering mechanisms. But they eventually, I think over some time, figured it out. And it was done all by hands. the creatures would put their hands on controls, and they'd have this headset on, and this headset would somehow control or help them control the aircraft. And the avionics were very, very sophisticated avionics that it took us years, I think, to figure it out. And I was never briefed into that, so I can't talk. I don't know anything about what they figured out. But they took the crafts to Wright-Patterson, and at the time, in the late 40s, that was probably the best place to understand or try to figure out. They had the best scientists there to figure out how these crafts flew.
Did the energy device used to kind of like plexiglass or translucent, some sort of translucent object? Did you ever get read into any of the modus operandi of that, or how did they figure out how that worked?
I was not directly briefed in, but at some time in my career, I read a document in Washington that explained the U.S.'s U.S. scientists' understanding of what this was. It was an energy device that used a zero-point energy. That's what they referred it to as zero-point energy, and it was connected in such a manner that this device could power, I mean, from a very small flashlight or a very small watch up to a city, and the power was determined by what the demand on it was, and so each craft had one of these. The craft that crashed in Magdalena or in Horace Mesa out west had a larger energy device than the one found in Corona, and I don't think they could understand why, but it operated in the same manner.
And did they figure out how to apply that into other research projects? Did you find out if this was then studied and put into experimental U.S. prototypes? I
was never briefed in that program. I'm sure they did, but I can't talk about that because I can only talk about what I've done and what I've seen.
Exactly. That's all I want.
Yeah, I was never briefed into that.
呢個咧都係我欣賞 Richard Doty 嘅地方咯，知就説知，唔知就講唔知，佢都唔係第一次噶啦。咁更加顯示嗰個可信性咯，即係唔會係誇大。咁當然啦，佢係咪一個老氣骨咧？即係老氣骨都可以係裝假説謊，都可以用咁樣嘅伎倆嘅。咁但係呢個就係你自己嘅選擇啦。究竟佢係一個好誠實嘅見證人啦，定係純粹一個老氣骨？因為都做咗咁耐嘅 secret agent。咁但係呢個就係你自己嘅選擇啦。
So after this briefing, was there anything else in the briefing that stood out from the colonel?
The briefing pertained to the threat posed, the threat that was imposed by extraterrestrial crafts.
咁咧，羅斯威爾事件咧就暫時告一段落。咁如果你有睇到咧 Netflix 嗰個 Top Secret Project Declassified 咧，其實都係一個好好嘅紀錄片，去記錄低咧自50年代咧，其實美國政府已經有3大 project Sign、Project Blue 同埋 Grudge 啦，去研究呢個嘅 UFO 或者係 UAP 嘅。咁如果喺Richard Doty 呢個嘅見證啦，同埋有咁多唔同嘅紀錄片之下咧，即係軍方啱啱喺2021年6月嗰個國土安全部 UAP 報告咧，就分明係耍人㗎啦。即係明明有咁多軍人知道嘢，明明有咁多紀錄片係爆料，但係依家咧國土安全部嘅報告就好似係啱先如夢初醒咁，咁信不信就由你啦。係啦，咁如果咧你對以上影片咧有任何嘅意見咧，請喺 comment 嗰度留言啦。如果你中意嘅話咧，請 like、share 同 subscribe。多謝各位，拜拜。